Right.
of
Okay,
30.
we have officially started, amazing enough, and the time is, this is a record 7 minutes past seven. So we're still waiting for Henry, so I'm not going to wait for him. But we've got co-host in the name of Richard, so let's crack on. Let's breathe. Deep breath, folks. Deep breath exercises. Right. So I want to know if anyone's got any news for us tonight. So let's see. Let's start off with Dickie. Dickie Dido, have you got any news for us?
No, no, nothing for me. Nothing
Do you know
new.
what?
Nothing new.
My Barry and District column have really set light now. I'm getting people writing to me in online and the Facebook site, the email, and I was trying to put the article together, and I realised I didn't put loads of stuff into it. Did you know the paddling pool over Barry Island was blown up in the 1970s?
I knew they smashed it up. I don't know if they blew it
No, it
up.
was blown up. The guy was part of the boys brigade, and they had some military people there, and they blew it up. And strangely enough, I didn't put that in the piece this week, which was about the shop. So I got to put that in next week. Anyway, nobody else knows what we're on about, Richard. So we'll crack on.
No, I've never heard that though.
Well, it's going to be true in the Barron District next week. So anyway, I had the Webb family on to me about them in the old dinky shop on the right there as you go up and up on Friars Point. So
Yeah, on the top.
you got the piece anyway. Right. So Pat, anything you want to say this week, darling?
Uh, just about St. Fagans being burgled, Bronze Age gold
Yep.
stolen.
Yeah, no, that is old news, Pat. But however, I do believe that they've apprehended the people, but they haven't found the gold, right? And the thing is about gold is it's got quite a lower melt temperature, and it wouldn't take somebody much with a Bunsen burner to melt it down into a block and hide it in a field. So we could have lost that for good now. So we're not doing any hoards tonight, I do believe. We're mentioning something about a hoard, but we're not really doing them tonight. But anyway, thanks for that, Pat. So who we got next? We got Anne. Anne. Anne, you witch. Right, which she's not saying anything because I think I upset her last week. Right, Bill. Do you know what, Bill? I'm going to give you a name tonight, right? Because I do not like people without names in my classes, right? So I'm gonna put a name down for you.
Make it
Bill,
good.
anything you want to tell us?
Uh, I was up in the Cotswolds last week with my ramblers for a week.
Oh yes, you said.
Based in Bourton on the Water, and outside, about a mile outside, there's an old, very old, obviously, Iron Age settlement called Salmonsbury. And on
Mm,
top of that, the Romans built a fort. So I went and investigated, but it was quite disappointing, actually. Basically, fields and some notice boards. So I'm trying to get some more information about it, But it's not unusual for the Romans to build on previous sites, is it?
no, it's not. And
So,
the one thing I would say, 2 points for that, is that you probably went the worst time of year because you don't have any crops and stuff sort of allowing us to see things. So that's probably not the best time of year to see a site like that. But obviously lots of the foliage is gone, so it's 50-50, isn't it? So and basically um yeah, you are very right. And the point I was going to make is that there's a site in the Ferndale Valley, right, which you've got a Roman fort up near Mardy, and that was an Iron Age site that was occupied by the Romans. So yeah, it is quite common. We've got evidence of the Landcarven hill fort being reoccupied a little bit by the Romans. We've also got the one at Colhue Bay in Lantwick Major. So there's lots of evidence of it. And also, Bill, you forgot Maiden Castle. There's a Roman temple on the top of it.
indeed, which we've seen together, quite right.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
recycling is not new. So that's my bit, Carl.
exactly. Um, right, Goff, anything you want to tell us?
No, I sent you the article about the latest comprehensive
Oh, yeah,
maps of Roman roads on their empire.
yeah.
Last week.
I
Yeah.
I like that. I discussed it. Not sure that I agreed with a lots of it, but I would say that what we did last night, we started off with some images from Judith about Athens and stuff, and I thought, right, that didn't really work because the format wasn't good. So we won't be doing that tonight because we did a bit the previous week. But we got lots of things, and we've got an article which I didn't do last night, so that makes up for it. So we've got lots of little bits tonight which sort of seem to lock in with each other along the way, and it's sort of introducing where we're going, and it's sort of letting a few things settle. So let's crack on. So Anne's probably going to jump in halfway through into the conversation, but as she does, do you know what? I'm really disappointed with Anne recently. She's not interrupted Goff when he's talking, which is really, obviously she's not in top form these days. Never mind. Right, so we've got to, oh God, where are these things? Oh, hang on a minute. I should have set this a bit better. Hang on a minute. I was posting something earlier on. Hang on a minute. Come on. Nearly there. At the top of the screen, and we're there. Right, okay, so sorry about that. So what we've got all of these things here. We've got quite a few things, different things. Whoever that is, let him in, Richard.
Yeah, Henry.
So we don't want to do that. So yeah, I started off a bit weird last night in the sense that I wanted to put a couple of things in which I've had on my computer for a while, and I just thought, right, okay. And I wanted to start off with where I mean to go, right? So this is a panel on the Arch of Constantine in the smack bang in the middle of Rome, right? And then weird thing was last night we had a person online who's one of our regulars on YouTube, and they said that they've been to Rome recently, and that apparently the catacombs under Rome have individual streets and all sorts of things. And he was basically making the point that there's so much about Rome that people don't talk about. And I just thought I'd chuck that in there because he chucked that in there last night when we were talking about it. So, but anyway, back to this, and there's a point to this on Trajan's Arch, not the column, not Trajan's Arch. Start again. Constantine the Great's Arch in the middle of the Forum in Rome, and this dates to roughly about 337 AD, probably around the death of Constantine the Great, right? And Constantine the Great had this wonderful arch erected in the middle of Rome, alongside the Forum. And the one thing I wanted to mention is basically looking at this scene, right? So if you go at the descriptor for this scene, it talks about the recycling of images from other monuments onto the Arch of Constantine, right? But the one thing that I want to look at is 2 points. The first point is that the Arch of Constantine in the middle of Rome, they saved money in regards to building the monument by copying stuff on other monuments, right? Which is fair enough. Let's go to the point I want to make. So the point I want to make is that archaeologists and historians, when they're talking about Roman Britain, right, it's almost as if you've got the Romans, they come over here, everything's nice and hunky-dory, and it's like things are normal, right? Things are not hunky-dory and things are not normal. And the point I want to make is that when you get people dressed like this, the Aquifulas with the standards there, you get them in different dress, in togas and all the rest of it, and their type of boots and so on, and people looking at these individuals from the continent speaking a different language, using a different form of money and food and carts and all the rest of it, this is like an alien invasion of Britain. So this is one thing that archaeologists and historians don't talk about. They don't talk about that the Romans coming over to Britain after AD 43 in some parts of Britain was like so alien. It was like it was like what the people in Central America witnessed when they first come across the conquistadors, those people in white, those people in white shining armor, you know, sort of glistening silver or whatever they're wearing, right? And it's like that's the type of thing that we talk about when we talk about Montezuma and the Aztecs and the conquistadors in the year 1521, but it's the same experience that people in Britain had in AD 43, right? So I wanted to put that across there, and I also wanted to emulate the idea that we don't really have Rome in Britain in the same sense that we have it on the continent. I keep making that point, and maybe I'm going to make it a little bit more stronger tonight. So, I had this on my computer, right? And strangely enough, Goff, I did not have this on my computer in regards to your article. I was going to do this anyway, right? But then your article cropped up, Goff, and I thought I had to use it tonight because it ties in with this lovely image. Now, one of the things that we've been talking about is Wade's the Wade's Road in Yorkshire, which we're going to be doing a little bit more research on. There's a length of a mile of road, and it's turned out probably not to be Roman. And there's another image to light, which is part of your research, folks, which is not coming up yet. But I'll tell you when you've got a bit of homework tonight, folks. I'm showing you an image, and I want you to find out the name of the Roman road, which isn't a Roman road, which they thought was a Roman road. We'll come to that in a short while. Let's not get too confused. It's Goth's fault. But the point is that we're looking at this, and I'm thinking, right, that's the image that we showed at school, right? How Roman roads were built, or similar to that, right? And that is not really comparing the image above, right? Because we really didn't have roads built like this in Britain. Now, last night we had Will, the guy from Canada who's joined the class on a Tuesday that you've met once, I think. Will was saying, about Roman legionaries, soldiers needed something to do other than campaigning, because they were highly skilled engineers and stuff, and they built roads. And I said, hang on, Will, we discussed that last week on Wednesday, and we discussed the Swiss fort on Wednesday, right? And I said, obviously, why are they there? And we had a little bit more of a conversation about that. And we're talking about the Roman military, and we were talking about the Roman military is very much involved in mining. That's one thing that we did mention last week. Now, look, thinking about ahead, what we're doing tonight. We do have lots of little bits and pieces, but when I completely usually dismiss this sort of this Roman road thing that's going across Britain, is that we surely don't have much evidence of roads like this, because Britain is a different part of the Roman Empire. It's a very different part. And this is what a lot of archaeologists are really not understanding. When we think about the Roman Empire in Britain, it's a different beast. And when we start looking deeply into Roman era Britain, you'll see that fully. So where's that road there? Actually, I don't know where that stretch of road is, but it's certainly not in Britain, or I don't think that's in Britain. I think that's somewhere in France. However, that's not the question that I want answer to. But this leads us on to Goff's article. Now, I did say there was a tiny bit about there was not going to be hordes or anything mentioned tonight, really, or nothing on that scale. But I just wanted to make a point now, sort of moving my archaeological head rather than my actor head or farmer head or author head. My archaeologist head is now starting to think I don't think I should be encouraging or sort of going along with any arguments that are involving metal detecting. I really believe that this little passage points for it all, right? Last week we mentioned a coin hoard being found in North Wales, right? It was really badly written in the newspaper. Me and Bill ripped it apart. You had those two pots. They said there was 15,000 coins. Definitely not, right? And the two metal detecting enthusiasts were the ones who were excavating over 6 hours an important piece of archaeology because there was no museum staff to do the excavation. And I was thinking, this is extremely weird. And the reason why that is that if you've got 80 cases of treasure being reported to the National Museum of Wales every year, right? Their staff is run ragged, right? And now they've got a lot less staff in the archaeology department in the National Museum of Wales. Since the beginning of last year, they about March, April last year, they cut 200 staff in the National Museum of Wales, and there was a big chunk of them were archaeologists, right? Lots of them were retired, redundancy, and so on. Lots of them. So the archaeologists do not have time to look at all these treasure cases, right? And the point is that I feel it's wrong that metal detecting is still taking place in Britain. It's unlicensed, it's uncontrolled, right? And when metal detecting enthusiasts present a hoard, they basically say, right, you do all the research and then we want to be rewarded for this, and that's paid for by the state. Why should people who have a hobby be rewarded for that hobby, right? Out of taxpayers' money. And I think something should be done about it. I'm very much against this now. And the one thing and then when we got, then Pat said earlier on, again, a repeat because that happened about a month ago, when you've got people breaking into the National Museum of Wales because you don't have enough security staff to look after the archaeology, right? Because we're paying out for this treasure being found by metal detecting enthusiasts, something needs to change, right?
Yeah.
That's my point of view. Now, on a lesser scale, now, up from my sort of lofty heights of lecturing, right. Away from that, I just want to bring us into something else now, and calming down a little bit. I am, and I wanted to bring something weird into this tonight. What is weird is this find, and it links us in with the find last week. To be honest with you. Not the find last week, the photographs that we had from Athens last week, from Judith. And this is a very, very strange piece, right? So when you read this, I'll read this out as it's on the screen, but it's different from what I've got in front of me. It says, a man, there we go, there it is. A man brought his father's piece of Parthenon to Greek officials. They said it was from an even older temple in the Acropolis of Athens. Basically older, it's basically the temple that was at the Acropolis underneath the Parthenon before that was fully up and running in 450 years BC. The engraved marble fragment likely came from an archaic temple, a more basic temple, that's what archaic means, called the Hectopedum, making it around 2,600 years old. There's 2 points with this. That fragment there is a few inches in scale, right? Isn't very big at all. And when you're reading that article, you think it's obviously an artifact that somebody in Britain has got, right? No, it's not. It was a man in Chile, right? It was a man in Chile. He basically he returned this artifact to the Greek embassy in Chile, which I think is amazing. His guy's name is Enrico. Of course, it would be from Chile. He long believed that the piece of marble his father had brought back from the Acropolis of Athens in the 1930s was from the Parthenon, but experts say it was from an earlier temple, the Hecatopedum, which was built probably around 650 years BC. So it's a much earlier temple, and I think this is a really interesting piece because it's a community piece. It's making the past relevant because people around the world see that these artifacts do deserve to be displayed. They do deserve to be examined and understood. So in the Parthenon, in the Elgin Marbles Museum now, they can put this little fragment. I know it's not much to show, but it's obviously there are other bits of Elgin marbles that. Right, start again. The Elgin marbles are the marbles that Elgin took, but the similar marbles that were taken at the same time in the beginning of the 1800s. by Elgin, people have been taking other stuff from the Parthenon for a long time, and these things are drip drabbing coming back to Greece, which is absolutely brilliant. So the interesting thing, this ties in with another story, and I like a little bit of the Second World War. Greece was very much in bed with the Italians before the Second World War, and obviously it became very much in bed with the Italians and the Germans in the Second World War. And lots of fragments like this were being taken out of the country, but this was taken out before the Second World War. So Enrico believed that this was part of the big monument, but it's equally important. It's a relic that's a lot earlier. His dad had been in the Italian Navy, basically, and he just picked up this little object, put it in his knapsack, and brought it home with him, which is probably what lots of people have actually done. And it sat on their sort of mantelpiece in Chile as just another curio ornament. But when his dad passed away in 1994, he inherited the artifact, and basically he then displayed it in his own home. Now, interesting enough, let's give a few facts. So the chunk of marble itself weighs about 2.5 pounds, so it's not massively heavy. But I tell you what, right? If you put this in your knapsack now and the Greek customs, you would have a prison sentence. That's the difference. That's what's changed. And there has been a case really recently where there was this guy on a Greek island. He brought 10 bits of pottery back with him, and he was arrested, and he's looking at a prison sentence. So people are now taking things differently and seriously. That artifact stands at 3 inches tall. So as I said, it was inches, 3 inches tall, and 4.5 inches wide. So it's not a big piece, but again, it's a nice little object. So obviously the Greek officials, what happened is that in Chile, this is really odd. We don't hear about these things in Britain much, but in January 2025, Enrico was listening to the radio while driving when he heard a story about the efforts of Greek officials to repatriate marble statues held by the British Museum. We don't hear much of that, but if people heard a little bit more of that, they might realize what they've got. And he just basically thought, wow, I have a little piece of the Parthenon. I think it's time to give it back. And I think that's absolutely brilliant, right?
Yeah.
So this is part of that temple. This is part of that temple that was underneath the Parthenon, and the temple itself. There is the outline of the Parthenon on the outside. But this one, an archaic temple, a bit more basic, a bit sort of more Doric, square columns, a bit sort of bit Egyptian-y. So the Hecatopedum is where this piece actually came from. And I think this is a really nice little bubbly piece.
Carl,
So,
can I make a comment?
Please do.
Hekator in Greek means 100. So that's going to be the temple of the 100 somethings. I'm not sure what the rest of the word
columns.
means.
Topium.
100, yeah.
I think a topedum is a column. Yeah, I think a topedum is a column.
There was 100 columns or something in there, yeah.
Yeah, could somebody fact check that, please, if a topedum is columns, because I think it is. So Bill's right. It could be the temple of 100 columns.
Yeah.
So if somebody could fact check that, that'd be absolutely great. So a few months later, they actually realized that this little tiny fragment was part of the marble gutter of an archaic temple, and it's the first monumental temple on the Acropolis. So this is a great thing. So if it dates from 650 or 550 or thereabout, we don't exactly know when, but by 480 BC, however, it was destroyed by the Persians in 480 BC, right, which was probably about 30 years before the Parthenon was actually constructed. So the Persians burnt the temple down. So it's very likely that there was a lot of timber in there, because one of the things that we do know is lots of temples at this stage were made of timber, but obviously this is marble. So there we go. So finally for this, and hopefully somebody's got the answer of that term in a few moments. Wait for it. For Greece, the repatriation of any cultural assets that has been illegally exported gives us great joy and satisfaction. At the Ministry of Culture, we firmly believe that all illegal exported antiquities from any country must be returned to their place of origin, to the people they belong to, as part of their collective identity. I'm going to use the word community identity, which is more closer to what we understand. Collective seems like the state, but community, I feel like that's a better word. So the marble piece is now back in Athens, where it belongs, and the Greek embassy in Chile is also applauding Enrico, and officials hope his actions inspire others to do the same. And finally, Enrico says, this is a good point back to this as well, if anyone's got any artifacts. When I left the Greek embassy after handing over the piece of marble, I felt a special kind of satisfaction. I don't even know how to describe it. I felt like I had done something good. And I really think that's very, very special to feel like that and to think like that. Now, there's something that's come up again. This is an age-old thing. This is more about our history, more about our monuments, and it's been a thing that's been going on for a while. It's about oh, there's your piece. We are going to do it, Goff. It's all to do with the Silbury Hill, not Salisbury Hill as in the song, but Silbury Hill in Wiltshire. So visitors warned, historic Wiltshire monument is now completely off limits. It's 25 years when the centre of this mound actually collapsed. And there's two issues with this, that when we excavate archaeological sites willy-nilly, and we don't really care for them properly. So this was excavated in 1776. Initially, there were various shafts placed into it. There was even a work there in the 1970s, right? That this is basically a mound of this is a mound of chalk, basically, you know. And the problem is, I know we feel as members of the public that these monuments belong to us, but it's also the point that we can't keep excavating all of these archaeological sites and expect that there's going to be no repercussions. One of the big questions that I always used to be asked when I used to take people to archaeological sites, why don't they excavate this archaeological site? So Bill mentioned hill forts earlier on. And if you say go to Nash Point on the South Wales coast, you because you've got Monk Nash, where that's where I used to do my ghost walks, and you've got Nash Point. At Nash Point, you've got a hill fort, right? An Iron Age hill fort. And there's basically about 1/10 of it left. And people used to say, oh, why isn't this being excavated? And I basically said, well, there's the edge of the cliff over there, right? And it's a bloody hell of a drop, right? So if you start excavating these things, then the very rich bio of fauna, all the roots that go into the soil, keep the thing together. You start excavating these sites and the wind whips up and it starts to erode things, and we lose the archaeology a lot quicker. So it's not always a wise thing to be excavating these archaeological sites. And I just wanted to mention that to sort of give a little bit more context and a little bit more understanding to sometimes how archaeologists think. Now, this piece by Goff, and let's get into this one. So, oh, by the way, did anyone actually work out the translation of what we discussed earlier on, which is that word, the hecatopedon?
Go back. I want to print it out. I can't see it. No, it's half hidden. Look, that's hidden. Okay. Let me write it down for you.
Well, that's your research. That's your research. But Henry's usually got the answer by now.
Head on. Okay.
There
I'm working on it.
There is an article in Brill.com, but it's lots of words, waffly, and goes on for a lot. It
So,
doesn't
so you
tell me
can't.
anything.
So in other words, you can't get the answer yet.
Absolutely.
They say it very fast. Heck, it's okay.
If it's a Chinese person,
Pardon.
shut up. Right, hey, we want the answer to that, but don't shout it up. We'll have the answer after this. Right now, the one thing I think maybe more than one person sent me this as a link, but it's definitely Goff, the one I clicked on, and this here massive new map reveals it said 300,000 kilometers of ancient Roman roads. And at the top of this, it's basically saying, actually, they're talking about the tip of the iceberg. Now, can I just do my little fourth penneth, right? Most of those roads shown in Britain, I know full well are probably not Roman roads, particularly the Welsh ones, but that's me. But I would say that lots of the research done on continental ones are correct. But there is another point to this. When we can see all these little red things, right? There's very little to none going beyond the Roman world, right? And that makes me think. And I made another point last night. The one thing that made me think last night was, what if Rome had done more about becoming friends with other people? You know, building roads into areas outside the Roman world, made people understand that roads are a good thing, made people understand that building civilization is a good thing, right? But that was a Roman idea and people didn't want it, right? So that's why we don't get these little bits of road going off outside the Roman world. And also the concept of a Roman road is different within the Roman Empire to what it is outside the Roman Empire. And what is a Roman road? Now, that is what I was saying earlier on. Is a Roman road this sort of road surface with sort of various different layers, and there's these massive slabs on top with a ditch either side, you know, you've got the Aga, whatever, right? Or are there different types of Roman roads in different areas? So obviously, when we look at the continental Roman roads, they're usually massively paved. You know, we've got loads of examples in France. And anyway, we've got the various Appian Way
British royal
and
family
the Aurelian
watchers,
Way. That...
Prince Edward has finally opened up about Princess Diana.
What's that? What the hell was that?
Ah,
Oh,
it's
dear,
all right.
dear.
No, it's not all right. I don't want to know about Prince Edward. We want to know about Prince.
Sorry.
And we want to know about Prince Andrew, right? But we don't want to know about it in this class, right? Anyway, cracking on. I've blown my switch now. So basically, what I'm talking about, the interpretation of a Roman road is different from one place to another. So I was slightly skeptical with this article, right? But we're going to give it its due where it's due, right? So if we think of that, you know, Henry's been there. He's walked across there back and forth several times to get an ice cream. An ancient Roman pedestrian crossing in Pompeii. This is what we always think a Roman road looks like, right? You might get these in Italy, right? But you damn don't get them in this country. And one of the things that I get really angst about, right, is that when they say, "Oh, we found another Roman road in Chester," or "We found another Roman road in York," and you know, "We found one in Brecon," and I'm just thinking, wow, and it's just like, hang on a minute, right? That's a little bit of clay with a little bit of gravel. Yeah, but this is the most important thing ever, Goff. And it's not. It's what I expect to see as a Roman road in Britain. Nothing special, just a trackway, as they'd always had roads in Britain. And again, back to that connection with what a road is in Britain, and you know, Percy Bridge, where we've got a nice bit of bridge up in the north, and a Roman bridge and whatever, and we might have a little bit of road leading to it. But usually we're really disappointed in regards to roads in Britain, because canalized ways, rivers were the thing that happened in Britain in the Roman era. End of. Diva, Chester, there's a bloody river there. Eboracum, York, there's a bloody river there. Where you look at Londinium, there's a river. You don't need me to go on. Where the big Roman cities are in Britain, there's usually a river. Maybe Caliva Atrabatum's maybe a little bit of an exception, but if you look at Bath, there's a river.
So you need a bridge.
You don't need a bridge. But we don't do bridges today. That's another thing. Okay, we're not doing a Pont de Gare. We don't have a Pont de Gare in Britain either. This is the thing. When we that's another thing, right? When I say to people, let's find a Roman stone built aqueduct in Britain. My God, there's a bit of tumbleweed going across my room there. You're not going to find them. A Roman aqueduct in Britain is basically a gully with water, right, on the side of a mountain, like the ones that we got in Lampeter, right? Pimsaint. And we got the ones down in Dorchester, right? They're not actually raised aqueducts, right? Stone built aqueducts. So we did things differently in this instance. Anyway, it turns out that not all roads lead to Rome. Well, in this article it says that. After all, at least not in the literal sense. So back to this map. There we go, map. If you can, basically all those little red lines on there. So a new map of the empire's ancient land routes has nearly doubled the length of confirmed ancient Roman road networks. But what is a Roman road? Exactly. What define what a Roman road is? So they're saying 186,000 miles, with the major hubs located far from Rome itself. I think somebody said last night that the number of roads recorded in America runs into the millions of miles, right? But then again, that's the modern day and age, right? Route 66 and all the rest of it. I'm not saying that goes on for a million miles, but there's loads of roads in the States. But anyway, the point is 186,000 miles of road across this landscape, but they're saying this is only the tip of the iceberg. And yet the map named the itinerary, which is ITINER, little line E, you can look this up online, and has been made publicly available, represents at most, right, here we go, just 3% of the entire Roman road network that they believe existed. So what you're seeing here, right, is 3% of the Roman road network, not. So the 3% represents 300,000 kilometers, right? 186,000 miles. So in other words, if you want to do the maths, there's a lot of road network which they haven't found, or they're not aware of, or they can't really understand, right? So when we think about this, the researchers, when they were thinking and looking, this was a huge surprise and a sobering realization. Roads are one of the most enigmatic topics in Roman archaeology and history. They were all over the place. And we have proverbs like all roads lead to Rome. You know my thoughts on that. How can it be that we only know the location of 3% with certainty? And again, I read through this article and I'm really struggling with trying to figure out why they think it's 3%. It's like, oh, get a random figure out the air, right? Or is it like that? I don't know. This is, in fact, a hugely constructive finding. Okay, we'll give it that way. Thanks to our work, we know that localizing Roman roads precisely requires more research attention, right? So when we think about, when we go back to Britain, right, there was this researcher in the 1960s and the 1970s called Madgeray, right? We've got 2 copies of the Madgeray book, and I said to Michelle, if I ever die, these 2 copies of the Madgeray book are worth like 200 quid each. So great that we've got 2. But I don't know why I mentioned that. But the one thing about the Madgeray books is that they record, in the eyes of Madgeray, this historian, Madgeray, that there's thousands of miles of Roman road in Britain, but bit by bit, some of those lengths of Roman road are not Roman, definitely not. Now, when we look at Wales, for example, you go down the road and there's a San Helen. There's half a dozen San Helens in North Wales, Betws-y-Coed being one. There's half a dozen San Helens in the Brecon Beacons. There's a load in West Wales. There's loads of them, right? And you're thinking, well, they can't all be Roman roads. And I mentioned, God, did I mention this last week, or did I mention this last night? Anyway, I did mention it last week about this trip that we added up in the Brecon Beacons, and we weren't able to find the Roman road, but the Roman road that we're looking at was like this little gully in front of us. That's where San Helen is. So basically, so what is a Roman road? This is the point. The definition of a Roman road needs to be defined, right? So in other words, it's a routeway that was used in the Roman period. This is my definition, and that's what a Roman road is. It doesn't mean to say that there's big paving stones across it. And one important point, one massively important point, when we think about Roman roads in Britain, now this is a really important point. I and a few other historians say this, that when the Roman military came into Britain, right, they followed existing trackways, right? And they got from point A to point B, right? Usually, other archaeologists and historians say that on the way from point A to B, right, they built a road, right? Well, they would never get to B, would they? Yeah, they want to get to B, right? You're not gonna get there very fast if you're building a road along the way, right? But this is the impression that they give, right? So when the Roman military is moving up north, i.e. to Hadrian's Wall, and we're going to do all that a bit later on today, when the Roman military is moving up north in Britain, the responsibility of building roads and maintaining any existing trackways and roads in Britain falls down to the towns and cities that the Roman administration has set up. But in most cases, the towns and cities did not raise taxes to maintain roads, because, as you know, taxes are very unpopular, strangely enough. But the Roman tax sort of level was no more than usually about 5%. Unlike, yeah, let's not go there, right? If maximum people were taxed in the Roman period was no more than 5%, but 5% was a lot in the Roman period, right? If you're say running Caliva Atrabatum, right, or you're running Venta Silurim Caioent, you're to make yourself unpopular, you're going to say, right, you know, the 3% taxes you're paying, if we add another 2, we can build the roads. It's not going to make you popular, right? So in other words, because of the way roads were built in Britain, right, other than the continent, we didn't build them. That's the true answer, right? But this is like a rendered type of road that you might find in Turkey. Loads of these things, Ephesus, loads of them. You know, Bodrum and various other places. So the ancient Roman road was hugely influential, with a far-reaching dominion that, at its peak, spanned 5 million square kilometers. Right. So this is the empire. 5 million square 5 million square kilometers was the Roman Empire, obviously controlled from Rome itself. So we think about literature and propaganda, graffiti, art, and all the rest of it was carried along these roads, and also this is, let's get my mind into where I want to be as I'm going through tonight. That the road itself was the downfall of Rome, where they existed, right, and where this survey's leading us. If it's something like several millions of miles of road that we still got to find, right, lots of those roads led to Rome, right, or Ravenna, right, or Constantinople, or anywhere, right. Nîmes, Segovia, sort of Nîmes, any of these places, all the roads led there, right. And you're thinking, well, that's where your enemy's going to come to get to the city. They just follow the road and they get to the city. Before, if you wanted to get to your enemy, you had little trackways and it was very difficult to get to places, right? So that was one of the downfalls of Rome. And obviously internal fighting and all the rest of it led to the downfall of Rome. And obviously the magistrata not building these roads in the first place in Britain was one of those other points. So again, when we think about it, love this image. Its road network was also the stuff of legend, a vast web spanning the empire, credited with playing a crucial role in the expansion and maintenance of Rome. Such was their craftsmanship and record keeping that even thousands of years later, we still find those ancient paths, sometimes in the most unexpected places. I'm going to chuck an image on a minute, which I want you guys to settle on. Hang on a minute. Where's this image? Oh, there it is. Look at that there. That's the image, folks. That's the one I want you to find in Britain, but it's not a real Roman road. That itself is on the front of a book called Roman Conquest Britain. But we now know that that's not Roman, and that book's fairly new. So roads like that on the continent, definitely Roman. Roads like this in Britain, not. It's a fake. And we've only found out about that in recent years. Roads can tell us a lot about the ancient Romans, such as how they moved around and traded with each other, the extent and timeline of the empire's reach, And also, guess what can be spread around roads? Diseases, right? Sneezes called diseases. So basically what we're talking about is, diseases can be spread through this road network. And the researchers for this whole survey are the Bruchmans. And also, if we go back again, the website that you can actually look at is it's actually mentioned on this image. There it is. If you type that in at the bottom, the itinerary with that there at the bottom, you'll get to this website. So obviously they're bound to have missed lots of things. And the main contribution of the project is that it brings together all that research about Roman road locations. And they're saying that there's over 14,769 road segments that they know about, and obviously tens of thousands of more. This is the first open database. So this is one of the things we had a database of Roman roads in Britain because the Maghrets work in the 60s and 70s. However, this is probably the first time that this has been done on sort of a Roman Empire scale. Lots of people have been studying Roman roads for over 200 years. So scholars now can try to look at this. It's a database online. What they're doing, they're looking at this, and apparently this all started off in about 2000 with something known as Barrington's Atlas of the Greek and Roman World, where people were starting to compile this stuff together. But now the historic itinerary record, Roman milestones, statues of Lloyd George, archaeological site data, historical maps, and so on, are all helping us understand where these Roman roads are. But there's one problem with the historical maps, and me and Richard have discovered this. When there's maps of the Vale of Glamorgan, right, which show that every single road that existed in the Victorian period was classed as a Roman road, right? So when people are saying there's a Roman road, it's probably not a Roman road in Britain, and they've misinterpreted it as being a Roman road. So what they've done in this survey is they've gone beyond looking at maps. They've compared evidence from excavations to prove there is a road, literary sources from historians to prove it's a road, not just by looking at maps, satellite photography to identify traces of ancient roads, and historical topographical maps showing a timeline before dense urbanization when Roman roads could have been more visible. And they're basically saying it's there's a fundamental so this period that we look at the Roman roads and we see lots of change going on when lots of roads disappear is probably at the time of the Industrial Revolution from about 1750 onwards. So it's only now that we're actually trying to get the fascinating work to understand where these roads are. Although the empire itself is long gone, the ghost of its reach lives on the highways that connect the world. And hopefully we can get more of definition about what a road is so we can make it a lot more exciting. So what they're saying is, meanwhile, the work continues on that website. The team plans to continue extending the itinerary, hopefully building the most comprehensive map of Roman roads that the world has ever seen. And so they've got 300,000 kilometers is really only the tip of the iceberg, the Bruchmans say. And they also say, we hope to stimulate future work to improve the open knowledge of where all Roman roads are. And can I just make a point about this, is that a few years ago, because it obviously the report was slightly out of date. I chucked it on the fire a few weeks ago, but I had this report about a survey that was made in the Vale of Glamorgan of a Roman road route, and it's the Julius Maritima. So we know that Julius Maritima, the alignment of the Julius Maritima, not a paved road, but the alignment of a road used in the Roman era to link Cardiff, to link in to Bovium, Cowbridge, to then link into places like Merthyr Mawr and then Pyle, and then go up to Margam and Neath and all the rest of it. That they were doing a study from, I think, Corntown all the way over towards where the New Inn Bridge is. And they did a survey, and there was a little bit that they sort of felt that they found an alignment running from Ueni all the way through to the Herrington Hotel, which, as we know, Ueni, and then it went from there in a weird alignment all the way through to the New Inn Road, which is Merthyr Mawr.
I've walked part of that, Carl.
Yes, and
you walk the other side of Headingstone. Yeah, I walked it through the fields. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've done that. You and I did a bit of that. Yes, we did that. Because we you and I have we've done walks with that, and we found a bit by the Red Hill roundabout, which is that roundabout outside Bridgend. But what they did find was that as a road, they were finding a little bit of a gravel surface, and that's all the road was. And it was really, really faint. So that basically what represents what these roads were in regards to a context in Cymru, Wales. So we've got to move on to something else. Now, the next thing, and obviously I've got a hell of a lot to go. So, by the way, did anyone actually work out what that meant?
The Temple of the 100 Pizzas.
What?
It's gone quiet.
Get off!
No, that's the closest I can get, but no, it's not that, Carl. It's a different I'll have to work on that one. I can't find that in my Greek dictionary at the moment. It's an awkward one.
So the Tompedum, that's not going to be temple, is it? So that could be columns, I would say. So.
Well, I looked at columns. It's not that either.
All right, okay.
I looked at lions, so I'm still working on that.
Right, Bill, you've got to turn up next week to tell us, because we'll be on tenterhooks. We'll be on tenterhooks. Right, this is a really interesting one, and this, I know, I don't want to get political tonight, and this is where it went off political last night. So don't react to what I'm trying to say. There's a lot in the news about the BBC and fact checking, right? Nobody comment. Now, this article's come from Fox News, right? And I was a little bit critical, and although the information in Fox News about the location of the site, which is Mercer, right, I then realised that they might actually have the battle, which these bodies are associated with, wrong, because there was a battle by Magnentius and Constantine II in 351 AD. But this is showing on the screen as a battle of the Emperor Galenus in AD 260. So I haven't fact checked this because it could be from either battle, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to say obviously there was a battle, either it was AD 260 or AD 351. Either Galenus is involved, Magnentius, or Constantine II. It doesn't matter. The point is, the story is what we want to know about, right? And they're on the, let's go to my notes. So warriors found stacked in ancient well reveal violent tale of battlefield defeat, archaeologists say. And what we mean by defeat, bodies found in a well is evidence of the defeat of the enemy army, whoever they were. But we know who the enemy army was. It was a Roman army. Now, I mentioned a cursing glance earlier on. I mentioned the downfall of Rome was Rome, right? Because there was a lot of civil wars. In 260, there was a civil war. In 351, there was a civil war. And this was usually by two factions of the Roman world, right? And this goes back to the early days of how the Roman world was created. And what we mean by that is quite simple. Let's just chuck this out. So from the period of the Roman Republic, from the 500s onwards, all the way to the likes of Julius Caesar, and then the emperors proper, Augustus Octavian, from about 30 to 27 BC, when Octavian became the first emperor. So the first Augustus. The point is that up until that point, the Senate would elect two consuls or two leaders, right, two top senators, right? And the point is it was a sound system that if the senator, that top consul, right, because Julius Caesar started off a consul before he became a dictator, like Sulla before him. We'll look at all that stuff at the end. There's a little bit more context. So basically, if you had one leader going corrupt, then the Senate would get together with the other leader and get the other one out, and there would be a yearly election, right, to elect the consul. That's really interesting because when us guys went to school and we looked at the 1830s, there was a load of points that the Chartists want. They wanted a yearly general election, right? Which is based on the idea of the old Roman idea that there was a yearly election, which, to be honest with you, in this day and age, wouldn't be a bad idea, to be honest with you. But let's not get political, right? So then moving on, cut the faff, Carl. Moving on. So the point is that when the emperors ruled, there was usually two Caesars, right? There would be the big emperor, and there would be usually two Caesars who would rule over different parts of the empire, right? Whilst things started to break down in the empire in the late 200s and into the 300s, and then into the 400s, these lower Caesars would fight each other, right, for control of the empire, right? But that wasn't the reason why you had two Caesars. You would usually have two Caesars to sort of balance each other out, and it was pandemonium, and that's based on hundreds of years earlier and how people thought, right? So anyway, we looked at this, and it was researchers recently identified the bodies of Roman warriors found stacked in an ancient water well in Croatia, right? And there it is. And they looked at lots of the other wells. Usually in lots of places, there's lots of water wells, right? And so basically, when a well gets contaminated, you backfill it with a load of crap, right? In this instance, after the battle, they chucked a load of bodies down there after stripping the bodies of all their armor and stuff, and then backfilled them, right? And then dug another well. And you see this happening in London a lot, not in regards to bodies, but what we do see in London is that the Roman civilization, it would dig a well, and then when it got contaminated a few meters further on, they would dig another well. So the main intention of putting these bodies down a well was to humiliate them even in death by dumping them unceremoniously in a used well without proper care and any rights, or in a cesspit. So this is what we're talking about. So the bodies were uncovered outside the city walls at Mercer, and this is another point why archaeologists have got to do more research in Britain, for example, and not be worried about this metal detecting trash. These bodies were found outside the city walls of Mercer, which is known in modern day Croatia as Osijek, and Osijek itself is there in Croatia. So Osijek. So basically, they found these bodies in 2011. It's only now that they understand the bodies, right? Because they've examining them now, right? So it's only now that they've understood what these bodies are about. So the corpses are associated with one of these battles, 260 or 351. And the conflict was won by one Roman emperor over another Roman emperor, or a rebel commander. And this was one of the running crises of the Roman Empire. They'd have all these crises. So using radiocarbon dating and isotopic analysis research determined that the men were between 18 and 50 years old when they died. The soldiers suffered from various sword cuts, punctures, and broken bones, and most of these were attributed to earlier damage on their bodies, right? Because being a soldier, as you can well appreciate, you're going to have wounds all over the shop. So the scientists also learned about the men's lifestyles. They had grain-based diets and showed signs of heavy physical labor. So they were definitely Roman soldiers, right? It's a bit like finding monks' bones. Good diet, right? But, lots of problems with the bones. Monks' bones, medieval period in Britain. That's the same with Roman soldiers, high grain-based diet. But except our monks in this country ate very well, and that's another story altogether, Henry VIII. So genetic testing also showed the soldiers came from a mix of Northern European, Eastern European, and Eastern Mediterranean backgrounds, obviously clearly soldiers. So coming from this period in the late 200s, coming from the period into the 300s, it basically means that these could have been either legionaries or auxiliaries from any part of the Roman Empire. This is something that had changed with the Edicts of Caracalla in AD 212, where anyone who's a citizen in the Roman Empire was somebody who could actually be a legionary or auxiliary. So again, thinking about this, and some of the injuries found in the skeletons were sustained long before the men's deaths. And the archaeologist by the name of Novak said that those injuries were nicely healed. So obviously these weren't causes of death. These were obviously causes of death. There's a broken bone. Somebody's bone's been sliced into. So, however, these injuries also tell us that they led violent lives, naturally, as most of these can be associated with violence, especially blunt force injuries to the skull, or married to a woman with red hair who constantly beats you up. But that's another story altogether. So they went through multiple episodes of violence. Researchers were also able to differentiate those who died in battle with injuries to the front of their skeletons and those who were executed afterwards. So those that the heads, basically, if you're beheaded, right, your head's just going to be tossed in the pit with the rest of your body, right? But there's one thing: the bodies were articulated, so it means if they're disarticulated, the bodies were collected ages after and chucked down a well. But because they were articulated, it means that they were chucked down about the well, just within moments of the person's death, right? But they had been stripped of all valuables. The archaeologist Novak said he believes the deceased were soldiers of the losing side. And again, being chucked in a pit, right? If these soldiers were soldiers belonging to the winning side, our reasoning is that they would be buried in formal graves with full ceremony, not like this. Very true. So if these were soldiers, I've already done that. So the professor said he saw a similar grave with 25 adult males in this locality with a dumped cow carcass on top, which also suggests deliberate humiliation. Now, that is the ultimate humiliation. You've been defeated in battle. Your body's placed down a well, right? You're stripped of everything, right? Nobody knows where you are, and then a cow's dumped on top of you, right? Which would be the ultimate humiliation for a Roman soldier. So we discussed that last night, interestingly enough. So we could deduce that the position of the skeletons as they are located one above each other and completely articulated. And if the well was used sometime after they were dropped in, the skeletons would be at the bottom and completely mixed due to disintegration. The well was clearly sealed after they'd been dumped down there. So one thing that I always don't get in history, right, is like it's like you think about the Battle of Homs between Saladin and the Crusaders, right? If you surrender at that battle, you're going to be enslaved and you're going to die a horrible death, right? So why surrender, right? And I always don't get this, because if you're going to be executed after a battle, right, why do you even think about surrendering in the first place, right? This is one thing I've never been able to work out. But anyway, cracking on. So seeing this is quite unusual, and is quite unusual simply because there were lots of battles in the Roman world, but battles between co-emperors, battles between one Roman army or another, even though they were rare, these are the things what led to the fall of the Roman Empire. There was usually one battle. You've got all your Roman sort of soldiers supporting you, and you've got all your Roman soldiers supporting you, and a few hermaphrodites who we come together, and one's going to be the winner. So when archaeologists are finding anything like this, this is a really nice find. There are several known mass burials of this, coming into these years, but most of these associated with epidemics of infectious diseases such as the Justinian plague, which was about in the likes of the 530s, 540s, where there were lots of mass graves associated with, but mass graves associated with wars, battles, are quite rare, because if it was like the winning Roman side and they were fighting like the Gauls or something like that, the Roman soldiers would be buried with respect and the Gauls would be dumped in a pit. But in this case, the losing side is a Roman side which had fought against another Roman side. They're dumped down a well, had a cow dumped on top of them, the well sealed, forever they shall not be respected. So it's 8:12. So what I was gonna do, I was just gonna do a few images and stuff, and then we're gonna settle into the last bit, which is probably a little bit lighter. But there's the Battle of Mersa, the other example, not the Galenus example in 260, but it's the other example in 351, where we're basically seeing the Roman Empire fighting the Roman Empire. Or not Constantine, Constantius, big difference. Constantine II is a different person. Constantius were two separate people. There's Constantius II, Magnentius. Now this is a really interesting battle because Magnentius was a pagan emperor, and Constantius was a Christian emperor, right? And Constantius won against Magnentius. And look at that. What is the point? I don't see the point of war and battles and all the rest of it.
Hang on,
But
you don't believe that, Carl, do you?
No, I don't.
I don't believe that for a minute.
No, I don't believe that for a minute, because like I don't believe the casualty rates are Culloden, right? You can probably work out the casualty rates for the likes of the Battle of Borodino, or in 1812. You could think of that with the with June, the Battle of Waterloo. You could probably get accurate figures for that, but this is, you could be a bit more skeptical on this. And the reason why you could probably be a bit more skeptical is, where the hell would Magnentius get 80,000 Roman soldiers? And where would Constantius get 80,000 soldiers, right? When in fact you're defending the frontiers of Germanicus and the Parthian Empire and so on. So yeah, the figures are a bit inflated, right? They're always inflated, right? When we look at the Battle of Watling Street and we think about Boudica, right? Do you know what, right? I think maybe, I didn't tell him last night, but maybe I might think about doing Boudica next week, right? It's about time I did, because we did the other two female leaders. We might do Boudica next week. So the one thing is that with the Battle of Watling Street, right, where Boudica was finally defeated, apparently the Roman army had like 6,000 men, and Boudica had 100,000 warriors. And you're thinking, some stats. How the hell would she be able to feed them? End of story. It's not going to be that big. So yes, Bill, I'm glad you questioned that. I really am. That's where I am. So I want us to do just a couple more images to get into the spirit of the next bit. And do you know, one thing I like doing is I like looking at my books, my Roman books. I got loads of them. I got 300 books on Rome, for example, and I promised to give snippets from each of these books to you. But I haven't even really touched the top of the doodah. But I like things like this. And you're thinking, yes, that's saying all roads lead to Rome. Look at them. There's the Via Appia there, the one that goes all the way down towards Naples. The Via Aurelia goes to the coast and Ostia. You go all the way to the north. Maybe the Via Lata is the road that's going to eventually link with all of those roads that lead into Europe and all the rest of it. And you're just thinking that you've got a wall around this, the sort of purple wall, and you're thinking this is all up by the 100 years BC, well before the Roman Empire, and you're looking at little bits of evidence. And there's one key point with this, is that when you look there, you look the 9th. I hate it when they use thus. So the 800 years BC, so that is obviously before, thinking of the red little dots, that's before Romulus and Remus, because Romulus and Remus is around the year, the foundation, the city construction of Rome in 753 years BC, Abba Condita, the foundation of the city of Rome. And you're thinking, well, one of the things I didn't say was that lots of evidence tells us that Romulus and Remus didn't just turn up and build a town, right? There was stuff already going on there. It's just good for like a little bit of a legend to say that we've got Romulus and Remus starting something new. It was likely that there was lots of different things in the area of Rome well before them. And again, we'll take a break after this, but I just wanted to say one thing. I just wanted to make an impact with the next thing, and I'm feeling I'm gonna run out of things to say in a minute. I.e., my voice is gonna start to go. But I wanted to make a point, right? When we look at this, we know about the Etruscans and so on. The Romans took over the Etruscans, but if we look at these square boxes, which are a Roman colony, there's a point to be made. Pisarum, 184. Senna, 283. Potentia, 184. So when we think about something like Potentia, that's after Hannibal's in Italy. And also Sepontum, which is after Hannibal's been in Italy, right? The likes of Sinessa are there before Hannibal's in Italy in 295. There's a point to all of this, and you're going up the chart and thinking that actually there's not really any major towns and cities in Italy before the 200s, really. Yeah, Ostia there, 338, Fregenia 245, but you're actually starting to see about the 181's Grafscae. You talk Luna there, that's a nice name. Moon, 177 BC. The point I'm trying to make here is that when you think about Rome is really starting to come over its age after it's defeated Carthage, right? And you've got and they're building these cities like Tempsar in 194 BC and sort of a Croton in 194 out of the spoils of war after defeating the Carthaginians. But when you start to move on and you start to think about this, you start to think, well, they're only starting to move out of Italy, right? So by the time of Julius Caesar, right? By the time of Julius Caesar and Julius Caesar conquering Gaul, and you're looking at Spain, and he's this great victorious guy by about we've obviously conquered Britain, hasn't he? Obviously, yeah. He's come. He conquered Britain in a couple of weeks. There you go, job done. Didn't. But people brought tribute to him, and that's his say of conquering a place. And there's another point to be made there. We'll use that before we go with a break. Rome itself became this massive empire in a very short period of time. They haven't even got their own world sorted out until probably the 150s BC, right? Julius Caesar's, mind my French, kicking ass by 50 years BC. So within 100 years, the Roman Empire is really starting to come into play, right? The Roman Empire has grabbed this massive world within the space of 100 years, right? This huge area of the Mediterranean. And by the reign of Hadrian, 120 AD, the empire is more or less complete, right? So within a short period of time, really, you've got this massive empire, right? So the British Empire, if you want to sort of compare something there, is that you think about the British Empire's starting to form with the idea of the Commonwealth in the 1650s with the likes of Cromwell, right? So you go into the 1700s, you go into the 1800s, and when you scramble from Africa in 1878, that the British Empire becomes this huge thing, right? And probably the Romans did it a bit quicker than us creating the British Empire. And the Romans had something special to be able to do that. Their idea and thoughts of Pax Romana. And I think the point. Ah, yes, right. I nearly missed the point I wanted to give you. Right. The point is, we look at this nice little map which we're going to do after the break. Right. So little piddly little map, but I like it. So I'm going to make a statement now. I believe that the Romans conquered the whole of Britain, but not physically. Mentally, they conquered it. Right. So on their maps. On some of their maps, you show the whole of mainland Britain as being conquered by the Romans and all the islands, but they didn't physically conquer it. So it's a bit like the British Empire. There's a comparison there, a bit like British Empire. So a bit like the French Empire, you've got in France, you've got all this area of Chad, and the French say, right, this is all ours, but they didn't conquer it all. There was tribes and stuff who'd never heard of the bloody French, still don't. And when we think about the scramble for Africa in 1878, big chunks of Africa, although it was claimed by the Belgians, the Germans, the Italians, it was on a map. They didn't physically conquer it all, right? And this is when we talk about the Roman world. Even though the Romans could claim to have conquered this massive empire, did they physically conquer it? Did they have all of this empire here? Because when you think about it, lots of that in Africa's sand. And have you physically conquered it? Food for thought. Don't really need to say much there, but what we're going to do is we're going to take a break and stop sharing. And I'm looking forward to my bit of apple pie with maybe a camp coffee. You could tell I'm poor because I drink camp coffee. Camp coffee is a poor man's drink, right?
Yeah,
Isn't it,
of
God?
course. Yeah.
Shut up, Anne. I hope I'd
My
have
dad used
sympathy
to
there.
drink it. My dad used to drink it.
It's good stuff. I love it. I love it. I love it. So so right. So by the way, though it doesn't concern any of you guys, right? So Bill started this now, right? And because I've got thousands of postcards to send out, right? Those people that have got renewals of membership for the yearly membership, right? You can have a postcard off me. So there you go. You could build up your collection of postcards from Carl. Right.
Got one. I got a collection of postcards from you.
Yeah, you're gonna get more answers. Shut up.
Yeah,
Right.
they're good. They're good. Really good. They're handpicked and from the best museums in the country.
Exactly. Well, I've got a whole stash of them here. Oh yeah, here we go. I wonder who's gonna get that postcard. Or I wonder who's gonna get that one. Or maybe
Oh, do you know I'm visually impaired, Carl. I can't see.
that one. The cabinet rooms in London. Anyway, so anyway, let's crack on. Right. Bill, anything you want to say?
Yes, go and eat your apple pie.
Go and eat your apple pie.
All right then. Okay. Anne, anything from you? No?
Only that we travelled all the way from Rome, all the way up to Pisa. Oh, it's lovely. It's all through Tuscany. It's beautiful. And all these, mountain hills, mountaintop towns, medieval towns. It was just, I'd go again. I'd live there.
And can I ask you a question? How many vineyards was Joe offered for you?
None.
I got a question.
Go for it.
You mentioned legionaries and auxiliaries. Okay. I thought auxiliaries were legionnaires, but not of a Roman birth.
Yeah, actually, Bill, you are completely correct, right? But after 212, it changed. Now, we were going to do a tiny little bit of this at the end, but I may as well answer that question now. Right, so before 212, before Caracalla, you could only be a legionary and have that type of level of training and armor, and have the retirement certificate as a legionary and retire on a colonia, right? if you sort of were of Italian birth, you know, some sort of from the places that define themselves as Italian, right?
Yeah.
However, this is the thing. Caracalla, the son of the Black Roman Emperor Septimus Severus, right, from Africa, the first one, by the way, but there were a few others after that. The Caracalla proclaimed that every subject in the Roman Empire was now to be classed as a citizen. Now, the subjects were the ones who were the auxiliaries, right? But the citizens were the ones who were the legionaries. He basically said, now everyone is now a citizen, right? Which then meant that everyone paid citizens' taxes, which were a lot more than subject taxes. So therefore, as a citizen, everyone could be a legionary, but the concept of an auxiliary remained the same, but it gets a bit blurred.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Right.
Thanks for your agreeing, Anne. Anything you want to say, Henri?
It's quite interesting. If you look at the map, there's no Roman roads on the Isle of Wight.
I wonder why.
Can I just mention there are supposed Roman roads on the Isle of Wight. Do you know there's one weird thing about the Isle of Wight? We you know when we were doing the prehistoric stuff, right? And I said, right, we're going to do the Isle of Wight, and I said, actually, there's only like 2 Neolithic sites there, and you've got like a Mesolithic site, and it was just like really, really odd that, and I think it's probably the Isle of Wight has been understudied. That's why we don't have much archaeology there. So it's been really understudied. Whereas the Isle of Man, oh my God, that's been overstudied. Oh, and Jersey has been massively studied, where we get the Roman camps and stuff. Remember that Roman fort that was on on Jersey? Oh no, it wasn't Jersey. It was at Alderney or Guernsey. Anyway, there was like a Roman fort with the walls and all the rest of it. And the excavations were done there. Alderney, that's right. The excavations were done there by the archaeologist known as a Dr. Jersey. You can't make it up, can you? Anyway, I've gone off on a tangent. Right. Pat.
No.
Richard, quickly. No, he's not saying anything. He's not talking. He don't like us anymore.
Very good. Very good.
Goff,
How's that?
we've got a 15-minute break now. Goff, anything you want to say?
As what Henry was saying, I believe you can go online on that map and go into more detail. It actually shows the trackways through villas. That's just an overview of that map you've got there. But if you
Yes, it was.
go online and look at it in more depth, so there may be roads or tracks in on the Isle of Wight.
Look on there. So basically it's as you saw, it was ITINER, wasn't it? It was a little hyphen E. So we'll show that again when we come back after the break. Okay. So right, we're gonna have a break now. I want a drink and I want a bit of this. So we're back at 8:45. Anyway, I'll speak to you in a minute. Take care.
Okay.
And keep them entertained, Bill. Talk to them about your love life.
Right, that's it. Silence.
Right, coffee.
How are you, Pat?
I'm all right. My back is all twisted though.
Oh dear.
Oh.
Give you trouble, isn't it? Yeah.
Is it just getting worse, Pat?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I keep hoping it's going to get better, but I can use my walker with the wheels and get around though.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're pretty good. You've been, pretty good, really. So, I still, I was supposed to go to the gym, and do those exercise classes, but I'm going on Friday now. I'm going on Friday, 1 o'clock, just to start, otherwise I'm never going to start. And I'll just do the balance and strength.
Yeah, good.
I did the balance and strength, and I find if I keep wearing my hearing aids, it helps my balance.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So anyway, I'm gonna have a cup of coffee then.
Coffee?
Coffee?
Keeps you awake, that Anne? Coffee?
Yeah, well, So I
Decaf.
only have one, you know,
Carry on.
I have one in the afternoon and one on a Thursday evening or Wednesday evening.
Wow. No more trips to Orkney for you then, Pat?
No,
No.
it's pretty hard bouncing a three-wheeler across the grass.
Oh well,
Go
at
to
least, at least at least you can walk, can you, from A to B? That's the main thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is easy. Just getting to my screen.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
yeah, your walkers are still doing it every Sunday, huh?
yeah, every Sunday. Yeah, we didn't go this Sunday, last Sunday, because we were away all last week walking, you know, in the Cotswolds.
Oh wow,
We
yeah,
give ourselves a break. So yeah, we'll start again now on Sunday. Weather permitting, of course.
yeah.
Shocking day, isn't it? Really has. Yeah.
It's amazing you can still find new places to hike.
Well, trying to. We've done so many now.
Yeah.
Don't think we've got any new ones planned because we've done them all. I think
Oh, yeah.
explored them all. Yeah, yeah. But there we are. So we just retrace our steps. The problem is some of the walks we haven't done for a few years, and footpaths can change in a few years, can't they? They can be overgrown,
Uh,
can be blocked by farmers. Anything can happen. Yeah.
I remember I think it was the first walk I went on, and we walked, and then we ended up on top of a hill.
Well, of course, this is Wales.
It was so glorious, you know. I mean, it's a huge hill, you know, hilltop, you know. It was just amazing, you know. You just felt so free. You felt like the sound of music, you know.
That's right. If you can do it, yes. We've got some steep hills, yeah, we really have.
Yes. I just
Then
thought,
you-
wow, I'll do this more
yeah.
often. Yeah,
Oh, there's something like standing on top of a mountain and looking down on the world.
yeah.
It really is. It gives you a nice feeling. I've done it, and
As long as there's lots of room. I wouldn't want to be on a little pointy thing.
yeah.
That's a
Makes you
flat
realize
area.
how small you are when you
Yeah,
stand on top of a big mountain and survey the world.
yeah, it's just great
Yeah,
stuff.
good
Great.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a cup of coffee and I shall
You
return.
go for your coffee then? Oh, excuse me. Wake
I
up.
get an envelope and then I just make it from the envelope and it makes me
Yeah.
a latte.
I'm on water.
Are you? This is
I'm
a
on water.
cappuccino. It's decaf.
Yeah. Go on then.
Right. See you in a bit.
Yeah, off you go. Richard Burton. Yeah.
Into deteriorating places. Yeah. The more you wear it, the more it's going to come apart. So what is it that's made you want to repair this now? My 16-year-old Elias. They're very kind of punk rock in a way.
Why do they put all these stupid bloody things in their nose? Oh, truth. Oh. Shosholoza, shosholoza, shosholoza. Heidi hi, hoody ho. Heidi hi, Heidi hi, Heidi ho, ho, ho. Ho, 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 ho. Ah, 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 ah. But anyway, let's have a look. Oh. Ah. 1, 1, 8, 4, 9. Mm. 3869. I was a man. Go away. Where's that bloody thing coming from? These all joints. These all joints. Just what seems happened here then, isn't it?
Time to go.
Hello, Anne, you back, you?
I'm just checking, just checking to see if I'm supposed to be back or not.
No, we haven't started yet.
All right.
And your coffee?
No, I've just got it here now.
Right.
It's not real coffee. Well, it is, but it's not. It's only, instant. And it's that ground stuff, ground granules.
And you're an instant woman in our book. Joe, me and Bill have been lusting after you for years.
Oh God, I'm gonna have to go.
Look out, Anne. Look out.
And you had a lot of competition from Dorothy, though. That was the thing.
How is Dorothy anyway? Anyone seen her?
I think she's all right, but I haven't seen her, no, for a long time.
Yeah.
She's just gone her own way,
Yeah. I remember young every week.
Well, of course, she is a Bridgend person, so she knows a lot of people.
Yeah.
She does.
And like she lived in
A brothel.
Brackler Street when it was another kind of street. It wasn't called Brackler Street in those days.
Wasn't it?
Wasn't it?
No, it was like terraced houses going up there. They made that new road bridge.
Oh. There we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
Oh God. Turn your sound off.
What are you on about?
You didn't hear it.
What?
Bill's flatulence.
there we are. I coughed.
I don't think there's anything wrong with Bill's flatulence at all. That's really personal.
It's quite tuneful. There we are. Where are the rest? Where
Yeah.
are the rest?
Well, we're not really. It's just it's still 5 more minutes, I think.
No, it's not.
Oh, all right.
3 of us here. Where are the
It's 3 minutes, Anne. It's 3 minutes.
Do, 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 do. Do, do, do.
Do you know, I just when I come into this class, my mind just goes blank. And
Why's that?
I've even forgotten what I was going to tell you.
We'll come back.
Uh,
Fear not. Fear not.
hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
So.
Will your mother help? What's her name? Helen. Is there any?
No, don't, Anne, don't go there.
All right. Okay. Oh, I haven't had any feedback from the my daughter's trip to Athens, except that picture of the Parthenon, whatever it is, Parthenon.
Parthenon. Yeah.
And
The Parthenon. Do, do, do,
I
do.
don't. I think that where her friends live was outside of Athens, so I think she had to travel in to Athens. So she might not have gone in every day,
Mhm.
but now
Okay.
she's got a lot. And now she talks. I don't know, she sends me those little WhatsApp. Have you ever had one of those WhatsApp?
Anne, what the hell are you on about?
Have you ever had one of those WhatsApp messages that's talking, to you?
Yeah, I have.
And
I send them.
awful.
Why are they awful?
You've got to go fast,
Hang on a minute. Me and Goff send WhatsApps all the time. We're loving and we talk about the world.
Oh, you mean you do a proper phone call?
Yeah, me and Goff, we have loads of fun on WhatsApp. Me and Goff and me and Henry.
Yeah. Well, I was just trying to say, when you get a phone,
I wish you
when
bloody
you get
would.
a little widget thing off your whoever's phoning you and it's
Yeah.
talking to you, texting you.
Yeah,
And it's,
yeah.
oh, I did. That's all I could hear.
And have you ever thought about going into comedy? Right, okay then. It's precisely 15 minutes that we had the break for, which was absolutely fine enough. Hopefully everybody's been to the waterhole. And Bill had to go at Anne for having a cup of coffee. I have decided to have a cup of coffee myself.
Camp coffee.
Yeah, Anne, look, I know I'm very camp, right? But get over it, okay? We're living in a world of
Well,
ble-
there's another
Oh,
set now, isn't there?
what?
Or identifying as.
Anne, I don't care, and nor do the rest of us. Anyway, we're back to the Roman Empire, and obviously this idea of the Roman Empire being formed, and it's that sort of the idea of Rome. I think that's very important rather than actual Rome itself. So and the point is, there's a point as I'm slowly getting back into this. When we go into this a little bit tonight that when you get into the 400s, did Rome ever leave Britain? And my answer is no, because people still felt themselves within the Roman ethos. They still identified as within the Roman Empire, even though the Roman Empire was long since gone. And whether you're wearing a toga or sandals, or whether you're wearing the clothes that Iron Age people had always worn in Britain, it's what you feel you are, which is important in regards to the Roman world. And this is what Rome wanted. They wanted you to feel part of this conglomerate of people. So the one thing that obviously we've got to start moving towards now is Roman era Britain. And I'm starting to get into that vibe, that sort of moment, that opening up what Roman era Britain is about. But sort of along the way, we've been opening that door, and we've been talking about legionaries and people from different parts of the empire, and we've been talking about emperors and the governance of this world. I've got to open the door a minute for Morgoth. Hang on a minute. A black cat. Go on, Morgoth. So, and again, opening the door to understanding Rome. That's a good place to be. So on this little map, as I speed up, whenever people think about Roman Britain, they think about Scotland was never conquered. But I'm saying in the eyes of Rome, it was. When we look at a map like this, what you can see is the idea of 4 frontiers, right? And although that line itself is pointing to Rochester, that line to me represents another frontier, i.e. the Gasque Ridge. That there is the Antonine Wall, that is Hadrian's Wall, and that is something known as Staingate, right? Now, the one thing that we can clearly say is that Britain always sees this sense of division. And if we take away the idea of Hadrian's Wall, and we take away the idea of the Antonine Wall, and Staingate and the Gasque Ridge, if we take away them, we're left with understanding Roman Britain in a different way. And what I mean by a different way, without those frontiers, Britain looks very much as a world that was part of the Roman Empire. And those questions and answers, why we've got those walls, why we've got those frontiers, will go on forever. Because in many ways, we don't really understand why Hadrian's Wall was built. It may have been built as a status symbol by officials wanting Hadrian to be deified as a god. The Antonine Wall, constructed in the reign of Antoninus Pius in the 140s, is in that similar vein. However, just chuck a little bit of a sausage out there. Hadrian's Wall was fed by aqueducts from the north, which means if it's a frontier defending against people from the north, why is the water coming from the north to Roman forts in the south of Hadrian's Wall? That clearly doesn't make sense. The Antonine Wall was a different beast altogether. It's this really thick sort of earthen on a stone base, but it's a really thick, other than the stone base, this earthen earthwork, right, with loads of little fortlets and forts along it, right, which looks very different than Hadrian's Wall. Hadrian's Wall has got lots of gateways and things leading through it, and at times we see one fort with gateways that was abandoned, which was opened, and another fort with gateways which were operational. The Antonine Wall is something very, very different that we'll come on to. But we also see that little line there, here, which represents, hang on, that little thing there that represents the Gasque Ridge. That is actually north of the Antonine Wall, and it just didn't seem to have one. The northern end wasn't completed, right? It was an array of signal stations. And what we do know is there's a location there known as Inch Tuthill, right, which is an amazing legionary fortress. It's so amazing that it's a whole couple of classes in itself. But that's north of these frontiers, and we do know that leading up to Aberdeen, all the way to Inverness, and those that don't know where Inverness is, there. Hang on, I'll get rid of that. There's Inverness, and there's going to be Aberdeen. There's lots of Roman activity, including sections of believed roads, sections of forts, sections of Roman villas, all sorts of wonderful things. And what we've done, we've just talked about what's north, not what's south. Let's move on. So again, going back to what we've done earlier on, sort of refreshing what Goff was saying about this wonderful. Oh, and by the way, we've got to share that as well. Hang on a minute. Let's go back to the name. There it is. So if those of you type in that there, ITINER-E, you'll get to that website that we've mentioned tonight, and obviously more detail. I didn't do more detail because it's something that I wanted you to look at. So there you go. You've got that saved. Look at it after the session tonight. Anyway, back to where we were, and on to here. So there you go. All roads lead to Rome. This is sort of more of a view out. One thing you're clearly seeing is there's lots of burials, mausoleums leading in and out of Rome. That's where people were buried. And obviously the eternal city of Rome. And again, the eternal city of Rome that could only be captured by people that were fighting for Rome or with Rome or its generals. Alaric captured Rome in AD 409, 410. And he was somebody who was trained as a general by Rome to fight for Rome, who actually decided to capture Rome. So Rome can only be captured by Rome. And Audacia was the final Roman general, Audacia, captured Rome in the year 476, leading to the end of the Roman Empire in the West again. And obviously between 476 and 409, 410, there's a load of times that Rome is actually captured, at which point Rome is not really this eternal city that it had been many generations before. Do you know what? I love going through books and seeing things like this, and there's a point to be made with this, right? I opened the book, and this is in sort of Atlas of the Ancient World, got many years ago in the 1980s. And there's a point to be made with this, that again, comparing Rome with how Britain developed as a Roman province, and nothing in Britain ever looked like that. It may have in France, it may have in Segovia in Spain, it may have in Athens, it may have in Turkey, Ephesus, and those types of places, right? It may have Jerusalem, right? Alexandria, but nothing. There's loads of bases, there's loads, Tripoli and so on. There's loads of places in my head. But the point is that we never had anything like this in Britain. We don't have anything on this level in Britain. We don't have those catacombs under cities. We don't have the vast walkable sewage systems in Britain. We have some built in the Roman period, but not a lot. We don't have stone-built aqueducts. We don't have stone-built colosseums of the scale of the ones in Spain, or the scale of the ones at the Colosseum, or in Tripoli in Africa. We don't see those huge colosseums. We don't find this type of structure in Britain, because we did things differently in Roman era Britain. It's not Roman or British. It's done differently. Now, the one thing that I wanted to say is that if you think of this complex here, which is number 13, which was built in a marshy area, they cut down a hill, that was built by Trajan, number 13 there, that area. But if you think about when you're looking at this, and you think about that structure there, and you think, that looks like a forum area, right? And you're thinking, well, what did we do with our basilicas and our forums in Roman era Britain? Well, I'll tell you quite clearly. Up until about the 300s, we had this vast basilica in London. And we used to mint coins in Londinium as well, up until about the 320s. Suddenly, sometime around the 330s, we demolished the basilica. Rome's got another 100 years to go in Britain before it's sort of seen to be coming to the end, right? But we demolished the basilica because we didn't need it. We didn't need these huge projects, and that's really important to think of. So what I've had to accept over the years, that when I've been looking at Roman era Britain, it's like Leonard Cottrell used to say in his book Steps of the Legions, or in the Steps of the Legions and so on. In his books in the 1950s, he used to say, why go to foreign countries when we've got the wealth of archaeology on our doorstep, right? And he was very right, but I didn't really understand what he meant. The archaeology in Britain is different from anywhere else in the world. We look at Stonehenge. You don't find a Stonehenge anywhere else in any other country. You find the Silbury Mound, and you're thinking, well, where do you find those things? You find Newgrange in Ireland, the massive weird projects. You find the Brochs in Orkney, right, and Shetland, and you think the even the likes of the amphitheatre in Culzean is quite unique, right? When you're comparing it with the rest of the Roman Empire, we did things differently in history in Britain, different than anywhere else, right? And the Roman era is no exception. And it's taken me years to accept that. It's taken me years to try and get that into my head, right? So when I go back to, I know I'm bandering on a bit. When we go back to this survey that Goff mentioned, and we've looked at it tonight, the concepts of roads are different. Everything's different in Britain, right? We're different in archaeology in Britain, right? And again, going back to Stonehenge. So when I sort of looked at this, I thought, actually, when we look, for example, at Roman culture in Britain, we might think, somebody's got a mosaic down the road, and then somebody down the road has got this like mausoleum with a carved boat on the top of it with barrels, and that indicates a really wealthy person. For example, we've got the Lion of Cowbridge that was found associated with Hop Yard Meadow in 1977 at the furthest end of Cowbridge, right? Trying to get more western end of Cowbridge, Hop Yard Meadow, where they got flats there, right? They found this beautiful stone carved lion, which used to be on display in the National Museum of Wales. I don't know where the hell it is now. Don't even know it got to St. Fagans or not. But anyway, the point is, and then you might get decorated pottery like that. Look at the beautiful decorated pottery like that. Or you might get another place in Britain with wonderful glass objects. However, what you really didn't get was all of this stuff at the same time, because again, we see it differently, right? So we understand things differently, right? So when I'm excavating on a Roman site, and I've excavated a few Roman sites, I'm not going to find any glass. I might find some nice black burnishware pottery in the odd Samian. I might find a bit of tessera, right? I might excavate somewhere else. I might not find tessera. I might find a little bit of carved stone, or I might find a coin, right? But because we're so far on the outskirts of the Roman world, not everybody has this wealth at the same time. And it tells a different picture at different periods of the Roman world. And when we think of going back to something like this, right, by the time the Romans start to really establish Britain, Rome has been establishing itself for about 800 years, right? So when Rome turns up in Britain, I argue myself that you've got Roman culture in Britain for 100 years before AD 43. Yeah. You might look at Kiliva Atrebatum, you might look at Chichester, you might look at Fishbourne, right? You might look over to Canterbury, where you've got little bits of Roman stuff coming in, and you've got burials at Welwyn Garden and so on, right? But it's only a little bit of culture, right? This is culture that's developed, enshrined in the emboldened embodiment of Rome itself, in one moment over 800 years. We just have Rome for 400 years in Britain, right? So we're never going to have constructed anything like this, right? And can I just, this is a nice little image to have in the background, and I want you to find out where this Roman road is in Britain. I want you to give us a name next week. You're not telling me tonight. It's homework for next week. You take a photograph of that, right? Where is that in Britain? Right. I tell you like an airy fairy thing the other week. And you know, when I showed you those photographs of these sarcophagi, the stone sarcophagi at where the ticket box used to be at the Chilean amphitheater, and I don't know where the hell they are now, but that was like I thought, oh my God, you could lie in those sarcophagi, you could touch it, you know, with the stone sarcophagi. Wow, look at thinking of all that. And then you think back to the writings in 1136 and around the time of Geoffrey of Monmouth. And it's either Geoffrey of Monmouth or another writer that's contemporary that describes these vaulted arches still standing in Chilean. And they're like, it's like a ghostly echo of a world that was once in the past, and people didn't know what to do with them, so they demolished them. So this structure that had stood for 1,000 years was demolished because they didn't know what to do with this structure. And this is the point. When Rome evaporated, they had all these little bits. Bill's been there up on the common of Margan, seeing some of the Roman standing stones in the alignment of where the Roman trackway was, not the Roman road built, the Roman trackway. These markers are there because there's no road. That's why you've got that's why you've got markers, right, to tell you to go this way. Not good to go up there in the mist. But these are echoes. We only feel in Britain as Rome being an echo. When we go to Rome, it's real. When we go to Pompeii, it's real. When we see the amphitheater in Tripoli, it's real, right? When you go to Athens, Rome is real, even though, and again, Athens is a Greek city, but it's a Roman city as well.
Yeah.
All that needed to be said. So what I decided, what went well last night, I digging in my little books, and I thought, right, I need to bring in more of my little books, because the problem is with relying on presentations based on everything on the internet is just not good, because it's not allowing me to expand. So when I'm doing this, it's expanding what we're doing. So I got this little timeline here. Don't go looking for it. It's from a book. So what we've got again, we've got the idea of kingdoms up until the year 509 BC. I don't go through all of this, by the way. I just chuck out a few dates. So 509, you've got the overthrow of Tarquin the Proud, who's a king, right? And then you've got this Roman Republic that goes all the way through these wars, the Cimbri War, all the way through these different cycles, right? And then what you've got, the birth, this great figure, Gaius Julius Caesar's born 100 years BC. So Sulla mentioned on there, the Republic's going through loads of changes. Sulla's mentioned on there. Sulla becomes a dictator in his own right, right? And then 82 BC, this great dictator, Caesar, flees to Asia to join the military, because, you know, suddenly Rome is a dictatorship. It had been a republic for many generations. Sulla dies 78 BC. Somewhere not mentioned on there, you've got Caesar and so, but somewhere not mentioned there, you've got 73 BC. You've got Spartacus, right, and you've got 71 BC, right. So as when we did the presentation about Spartacus, Spartacus was a statement of people wishing to see Rome maybe back to the old days, maybe back to a sense of more representation of the lesser people. But Rome was going in another direction. It started to see dictatorships. Sulla, it would see the dictatorship of Julius Caesar, for example, which is obviously on the next chart. But the one thing there, Caesar becomes a consul, 59 BC, becomes one of these powerful consuls elected by the Senate, right? Usually what you couldn't be is a consul the next year, but people didn't want to stand because there was the likes of Caesar and Pompey and all these other figures coming up. So then Caesar becomes this Caesar makes himself very, very powerful. And then you keep going through and you've got various different things. Caesar's first incursion into Britain is successful invasion in 55 BC. We know he's 56 BC. You've got 54 BC with Caesar's third incursion into Britain. And then you're looking at Julius Caesar. This thing come into an end of the Republic is building, right? So you've got 52 BC, the Gallic Wars, Vercingetorix in Rome, 51 BC, and then you've got Caesar again. Caesar is now starting to think of himself as his standalone dictator, 58 BC, right? Death of Pompey, there we go, in Egypt. And then obviously Julius Caesar, instead of Pompey in Egypt, is Julius Caesar meets Cleopatra, as we know. Julius Caesar dies in 54 BC, and you've got these various battles. Philippi, Battle of Actium, that big one. You're associated with Mark Antony, and Cleopatra defeated the Battle of Actium. And the interesting thing I didn't make last week is the Battle of Actium. That's a Roman, right, with an Egyptian army, right? Mark Antony, that's a Roman fighting the Romans. So again, you get this idea of Rome fighting itself a lot and all those lives being lost. AD 9, Varus loses the 3 legions, completely wiped out in the Teutoburg forest by Arminius. And guess who Arminius was? Arminius was a trained Roman auxiliary general, right? But he had actually turned on the Romans. So again, it's another thing that to be able to defeat the Romans, you need to know Roman strategy to be able to do it sort of at the beginning, right? And there you go, Caligula's invasion of Britain aborted. Was it or wasn't it? Because Caligula, AD 41, he was assassinated, become very unpopular. And there we've got this wonderful story, we've got AD 43, we've got, there you go, Roman invasion of Britain, legionaries, auxiliary, Aela, the cavalry, naval, military, rather than the Marines, and you've got Aulus Plautius, and then you've got the General Vespasian in AD 44, and then you're looking at Vespasian going into the rest of the history of Roman era Britain. But then what we've got, we go through all those years, we forget about all them, but then we look at this. Now, these are very important points. To get to my mindset, I need to tell you what's going on with this, because I keep repeating this because I've got my own take. So 409, 410, the time that it's captured, Rome's captured. On here as well, Honorius is the big emperor of Rome, but there's these sub-emperors, right? Honorius from Ravenna, not Rome, right? The British aristocracy throw out their Roman administrators. Well, we usually hear that there's something else going. With the diocese cut adrift from the remaining part of the Western Empire. That's really important. Now for 15 years, the Roman Empire has just been purely Christian. The Western Emperor Honorius allegedly tells the Britons to look to their own defense, but we're talking about, we now think that it's the Bretons, Bretonium, which is in southern Italy, that's asking for help from pirates, not Britain itself. But anyway, I don't go with that stuff. There's stuff going on, the aristocracy still feels itself as Roman. Constantine III, that's an interesting figure. In AD 407, Constantine III takes the Roman military in Britain, takes them over to Europe to proclaim himself one of Honorius's emperors, right? But he is defeated by Honorius. And then we got other dates like AD 429. Saint Germanus visits Britain to debate with the Pelagian Christians. These are the Christians that were different Christians than Rome's Christians, right? Saint Germanus was a a Roman Christian, right? Pelagian Christians were Christians of the Roman era in Britain, which is slightly different. And then you've got the idea of raids. Now, this is interesting. The wording there, so the author who's written these dates, Saint Germanus visits Britain to debate with the Pelagian Christians. So that sort of indicates that we're sort of looking at, for them to be here, they're under some kind of Roman rule. And we know even at AD 429, there are garrisons at Burd Oswald still operational in Britain, right? Roman military garrisons, right, with their families and so on. We're looking at Vindolanda as having something similar now as well. So AD 430, the effective end of coin use in Britain. That's really interesting, right? So coin use has kept going. So coins come over to Britain from the continent because they're being placed into circulation by the Roman administration. So the Roman administration is still operational in Britain in AD 430. Now, this is an interesting one. In 446, sometime around here, you get Hengist and Horsa, which is one of those things. The Britons appeal to Aetius by letter. Aetius is actually a Roman general, not a governor, in the groans of the Britons. Not a Roman emperor. He's a general. So Aetius is like a kingmaker. The groans of the Britons request for military assistance, but no troops are available to help at this time, right? So if they're calling for military assistance from Rome, right, and they don't feel themselves Roman, why are they doing that in AD 446? Exactly. AD 451, this is rather interesting, the Magister Miletum. This is basically the main general, Aetius. Again, Aetius, the kingmaker, defeats Attila the Hun at the Battle of Catalaunian Plains, right? So basically, the Huns are finally defeated after capturing Rome in sort of AD 410 and setting it alight. And interesting enough, another thing here, you've got Audacia, right? The last Western Roman Emperor, Romulus Augustulus, is deposed by the Magister Miletum, the general Flavius Audacia, who was actually a general for the emperor. He turned against the emperor and said, right, you're too young, you're going. And the end of the Roman Empire in the West. And it was done really sensible, right? It's not the dark, horrible thing that in history. Audacia basically says, right, Rome, nobody wants Rome anymore. So he collected all the standards and everything up, and he put them on a boat, sent them to Constantinople, and he said, right, you can just do Rome now. I'll do. You can just do the old Roman Empire in Constantinople, the Eastern Roman Empire, and we'll just do something else in the Western Roman Empire. Now it's over. I've got this very, very special book that I bought in the 1980s. That I've got a table, and I've got basically page after page. I've got all 126 plus and counting Roman emperors, because we've got one or two Roman emperors that we don't know. There's some Roman emperors who reign for 28 days, right? And some a week. And they're on this list. Some Roman emperors reigned for decades, right? But I really like this list. And one thing that I mentioned last night was this guy called Septimus Severus, who's up there, 193 to 211, right? Do you know that thing I mentioned earlier on, ages ago in this presentation tonight? You had this big Roman emperor, right? But this guy had two sons, right? Look at that date, 193, right? So if we go over to here, we look at Caracalla. Now, he reigns from 198 to 217 because he shares the throne of the Roman Empire with his dad. But Caracalla's a Caesar. His dad's an Augusta, right? Or an Augustus Caesar. Oh. But reigning at the same time as Caracalla is somebody by the name of Gaeta, 209 to 212, who was younger than his brother, right? He basically co-reigned with his brother as the two Caesars, alongside their dad, Septimus Severus. But in 211, Septimus Severus died, leaving Gaeta and leaving Caracalla to reign the Roman Empire. Caracalla couldn't stand Gaeta, so he killed his own brother to reign until 217. And then his nut job of the son takes over, but that's another story altogether. Elagabalus. There's a mouthful. But this whole Roman thing's really intriguing because this is something lots of people on the lower level would not really understand properly in the Roman world, right? However, there's a point to all of this. The Roman system of say for example, we've got 1 AD, 2 AD, and all the rest of it, right? Or if you're in Nazi Germany, we start from 1933, or thereabout. And but the point is that in the Roman world, things would be calculated from the reign of an emperor. So the big Roman emperor. So basically, in the first year of Emperor Honorius, which to us is AD 93, right? And we go in a second year of Emperor Honorius, right? This is how they calculated things, which is very different. So this is something which is very much new to some of you, understanding that. And then this is how people understood who their emperors were, if their emperor reigned for more than 28 days. And what would happen, there would be an edict. So Caracalla was very, very good at this. When he took over from his father, Septimus Severus, in 211 in the city of York, York itself became the most important place on the planet for a few months because it became the center of the Roman Empire. And basically Caracalla had horsemen riding to all parts of the Roman Empire to say, I am now in charge. That's how he... Say that, Anne?
Was Septimus Severus black?
Oh, he was black.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, as you've got a specific question about Septimus Severus, right? I've got this wonderful book in front of me, right? And I can look up and I can tell you as much as you possibly want to know about Septimus Severus without going onto Wikipedia, right? So we're just going to grab Septimus Severus. Here we go, Septimus Severus. It says he was born on AD 146 at Leptis Magna in Africa, and you can't get more African than that, right? Septimus Severus reigned for 17 years, 9 months, and 22 days. Caracalla 19 years, Gaeta 2¼ years. And interesting enough, what we've got is that after the death of Caracalla, we've got another figure by the name of Macrinus, who was basically not of the family of Septimus Severus and Caracalla. And then taking over was another emperor called Diademenium, trying to sort of deal with this vacuum that Caracalla has left. However, Elagabalus, who's actually the one that Caracalla wants to be emperor. Actually, he's not the son of Caracalla, he's the second cousin of Caracalla, but he's the one, as part of that family, becomes emperor. And he's assassinated in the Praetorian camp at the age of 17. Usually you find, if you go through this list, right, you've got Elagabalus, Severus, Alexander, assassinated by their own army. There's a whole list of them. It goes on and on. That
We'll
if the
have to
Roman
do it on another day.
Yeah, it's just so interesting, Anne. It really is. But I wanted to show you this. When there's another thing to know as well. The word Augustus there. This is Augustus. So there you go, Caesar. So this was Octavian, who was later known as Augustus. So what Octavian took was the name of Caesar. So he took the purple of emperor. His title was Augustus Caesar, right? Octavius, right? And then basically even though it might not show it, but it does. Tiberius was Augustus Caesar. Caracalla was Augustus Caesar. Claudius was Augustus Caesar. So basically, they used this title. So the name Augusta never left the Roman world until 476. Now, when we think about this is outside Rome, again, comparing Britain, and I will be done and dusted, I hope, by half past. So I'm just going to flow on this. So this is Caracalla. This is the Great Baths of Caracalla outside Rome. It was huge. It had an underground serving thingamajig, loads of things, columns and everything. But nothing like this existed in Britain. Not even a basilica like this existed in Britain. Because again, we did things differently. There's nothing like this, but there were things like this seen in France. That's the thing. And Trier, and we're talking about we saw this on the continent, but not in Britain. And just look at that. That was built in the reign of Caracalla. And this is one of the things. If anyone wants to say that some of these emperors were nut jobs, they had things really well commissioned in their reign. Caracalla, when you look at Caligula, Caligula was a massive empire builder, but he's not remembered for that. He's remembered as a nut job. So who's writing the history? Why are they said to be real nut jobs? I don't know really as much about Caracalla as I want to, right? But they did build things, and somebody I looked at something yesterday about a list of. Somebody had put a list together of good Roman emperors, bad Roman emperors, and all these other things. And it was quite an interesting list. And I don't know where Caracalla and Caligula were. So this was answering something that Bill mentioned earlier on. And what I basically did was I just mentioned something briefly about legionaries, cavalry, auxiliaries. And I think we've already mentioned some of this, but this is actually known as a parade helmet, and this was found at the Roman fort Ribchester in Lancashire. And there was apparently 2 parade helmets like this found at Ogmore in the 1800s, but whatever happened to them, we don't know. But these were military parade helmets, and you could think of something like this as being worn for special occasions, and this was in bronze. This is something that is related to the Roman fort at Corbridge. This is known as lorica segmentata. Now, Roman legionaries would have worn lorica segmentata. Now, there's one thing I need to tell you. Slowly but surely, the idea of being a Roman legionary started to die out. So by about the 400s, the Roman army was not defined as legionaries or auxiliaries. But the one thing to be said about that is that I was reading something. I was reading something, yes, from a book, and it basically said that some Roman legions, even though they weren't recognized as legions by the main Roman powers by the AD 400s, they were recognized as Roman armies. Some Roman legions, in tradition, in standards, still continued into the 500s, 600s, 700s. And I think the likes of Charlemagne may have actually had a Roman legion in his own army. And this is hundreds of years after the empire in the West had collapsed because of the traditions. So bits of this were actually found at the Roman fort at Corbridge. And there's the front, and there's the rear. And obviously, we're thinking about chainmail as well. Just I'm going to mention this quickly, and I am aware now that we are coming close to half past. So I'll mention this, that the Roman army, Bill's right, you had legions that up until 212 were only people from Italy, but after that you had legions and auxiliary. But to define legions and auxiliaries after 212, it's this, right? This was specifically worn by the legionaries after 212, and obviously before that, for quite some years. But auxiliaries wore chainmail, which would equally give you some nice protection. Auxiliary troops were usually the cavalry as well. Although the Roman legion actually had 500 cavalry attached to it, right? Out of the 5,500 men, there's usually 500 cavalry, and then there'd be about 500 auxiliary attached to it with like more cavalry. But one of the downfalls of the Roman Empire was the fact that the Roman army didn't have enough cavalry, right? So when you've got an army going onto a battlefield, obviously you've got artillery, the ballista bolts. You've got a small number of cavalry. You've got your infantry, but it's mainly infantry. The Romans started to come across the Parthians from Persia with more cavalry than them. They started to come across the likes of the Sarmatians with more cavalry than them, and the Dacians with more cavalry than them. They started to come across the Huns. They started to come across the Goths with more cavalry than them, and this is what led to the downfall of the Roman army, because they didn't have enough ala. That's the name for cavalry. We've got a guy called Will, who's with us on a Tuesday night. He's doing a lot of research into Getli Gaia Roman fort, which was being excavated at the beginning of the 1900s, all the way 1920s and that type of thing. Beautifully well preserved Roman fort. And he's got a little campaign to try and get more attention into this and try to get the archaeology more active again. But that's something that I mentioned last night. And obviously, if you ever do go to Getli Gaia, that there is basically a fort wall. And what they do find in the cemetery area, which is all of this here, is when they're digging, they usually find lots of pottery and stuff that is being found with excavations at the cemetery. And there is Getli Gaia. So what we're going to do, right? I'm just going to want to one last thing. This was new off the press. It says the 10th, but this was really new to me. And this is associated with the Emperor Valentinian, right? And I just want to mention this just quickly. This takes us to Hungary. There it is. So a building discovered in Hungary solves the mystery of the death of the Roman Emperor Valentinian I and the proclamation of his 4-year-old son. A team of Hungarian archaeologists believe they have located the place where Emperor Valentinian suffered the stroke that cost him his life in AD 375 on the Danube frontier. In the cold autumn of AD 375, the Roman Emperor Valentinian I, known for his fierce temper and firmness in defending the frontiers, was in the legionary fortress at Brigentio in the province of Pannonia, which is modern-day Hungary. His mission was to punish the barbarian tribes and the Sarmatians, which I just mentioned, a little bit earlier on, who a year earlier devastated the region. On November the 17th, he received an embassy from those that he was trying to fight against, to negotiate. According to the chronicles, the excuses of the envoys and their attempts to blame Rome for the war so enraged the emperor that in a fit of anger, he suffered a stroke and died. For centuries, the story of his death has been known through the writings of a Roman historian known as Marcellinus. However, the exact location within the vast fort of Brigentio, where this crucial event took place, had remained in complete obscurity until now. We do believe that he died in that building, which is amazing, really. So multidisciplinary archaeological investigation, the results of which are now being published. So in this building area, this is where he died. Amazing. Has brought to light the remains of an impressive building with an apse at the heart of the fortress, likely to be the reception area where the fateful encounter took place with the emperor, and that's where he had this stroke and subsequently died. So the emperor had reigned for 11 years, so he's quite a successful one at that point in defending the frontier of the Danube. And the spark that ignited the conflict was the construction of a fort, this very fort. And to make matters worse, it's likely that the conflict was one of those moments that again finally led to the collapse of the Roman Empire, particularly in that part of the land. And the one thing I'm going to mention is about his son, which I haven't actually done because this is so fresh. So instead of looking on the internet, I'm going to just grab Valentinian, and we're going to discuss what happened to his son. So here we go. So Valentinian the second. Was it Valentinian? Oh, right, Valentinian the first. Here we go. Valentinian the first. There we go. At Bragentio. This is what we're talking about. Died of natural causes. Had reigned 11 years. And basically, his 4-year-old son didn't take over because it was his brother. The brother of Valentinian the first actually took over. But years. I can't really find him, so I don't really know what happened to his son. But his son must have disappeared into obscurity. But we do believe that's where Valentinian the First had the stroke, and subsequently died. So that's another moment in history found in Hungary, and that was reported a day or so ago. So what we're going to do, we're going to call it a day. I think we've already lost 2 people. Pat, I think, or is it Pat still there? Oh, you're still there, Pat. Right. So, we've lost Goff.
Yeah.
All right.
Look, come on, you're too late. Look, thank you very much. It was nice for you to tell us all that stuff because it fills in the gap when you were telling us about the barbarians and the dupes, not the dupes. Well, all those people that we were talking about. Now, this is what happened in the Romans.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's thank you. I'd love to get one of those lists. I'd love to get the lists of those timeline.
It is pretty good, right? It is pretty good. But if you want to get hold of a copy of this, you're talking about 300 quid now.
No, it's all right. We've had an insight into it. Thank you very much.
I'll do bootleg copies for 100 quid. That Henry's going to do individually, each individual page he's going to do. So, so anything else, Anne, before you go?
No, that's all right. Thank you. That's.
There's my book, Carl.
Oh,
Emperors of Rome. Nice.
I tell you what I didn't know, Carl, that the famous historian Tacitus was emperor for a year in 275. If it's the same one. If it's the same one.
No, it's not the same one. No, it's another.
Okay. Right,
it's another Tacitus. It's one who's got the same name. It's another Tacitus. Yeah. There was an emperor called Tacitus, but it's not the same one. No.
Okay, that one's knocked on the head. You mentioned when the Romans arrived in 443, they followed a network of existing trackways and roads. Now, if they were there before, doesn't that indicate there was a good degree of travel and communication between all the existing tribal groups in Britannia?
This is one of the points that obviously the idea of civilization in Britain is a different idea to what Romans perceived as civilization. So, but obviously, it's a civilization that operated quite consistently and quite firmly within the parameters of what was happening in Britain, and all the structures and all the independence of thought and the idea that we do things very differently in Britain, and we did things very differently when the Roman paymasters took over as well.
Yeah, so that would indicate, I think, that there's probably a good degree of peace between the various tribal groups most of the time.
Yes, and this well, you've just said it.
Right.
Lots of historians used to say that the local peoples in Britain used to fight a lot, but lots of us are now thinking we don't really have the evidence for that, and it's not this brutish sort of Celtic massacring and head cult that
Right,
lots of
okay,
archaeologists
okay.
used to talk about. So things have changed there, Bill. They really have.
On the other point, we know that the Romans gave the Silures that name.
Yes.
Yeah. Did that apply to all the other tribal groups or not? Do you know?
No, it didn't because we've got if we want to go to the Iceni and we look at the Cantai people lot and the Catalani people, lots the Catu is on mentioned on coins.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And
On coins,
the point this point is that if somebody excavates somewhere and it turns out that the people of South Wales did produce coins, right? And we find a name on that coin, that would then be the name that they called themselves and not the name that the Romans gave them. That would be highly interesting.
Okay, so most of the tribal groups with coins, obviously, we know that actually was their names. Yeah.
Because it was written down by the people and therefore not by the Romans. So yeah.
Recorded. Yeah, okay. Thanks,
Yeah.
Carl, for that. Yeah. No more.
My pleasure. So we've done Anne and we've done Bill. What about you, Pat?
Nothing for me. I'm hanging in there.
You're poofed. Well, we a couple of seconds. And Henry, anything you want to say? I've just responded to your text.
Yeah, I just saw that. Thank you. Very intriguing. I enjoyed tonight very much. Did you pick up earlier, because obviously I dropped in late, the henge find in Manchester?
No. Oh, okay. Can you get that over to me? We'll do that next week.
We're going.
It's the Manchester
too.
Stonehenge.
Right.
Yeah, send that over to me. Send that over to me next week.
Right.
Okay then.
Okay then. Anything else, Henry?
There probably is. I think there's quite a long list, but I think I'll save it for another year.
You can stay here and talk to Carl.
I think he wants to go to bed. Right.
Yeah, probably. Okay then. All right then. Pat, it's been great seeing you. Bill, great seeing you. Anne and Henry and our other two. I know Richard had to leave us, and I think Goff was probably getting a bit tired. So okay. If nobody else has got anything else to say, I'm going to say good night. So good night, Henry, Anne, Bill, and Pat. Thank you very much, and everybody else online.
Thank you.
Bye then. Good night.
See you next week. Look forward to it, guys. Night night.
Bye. Bye.
Night night, folks. Night night.
Okay.
Enjoy the flooding in Bridgend.
Oh God.
Anyway, night night.
Good night. Enjoy yourself.
I will. I'll cuddle up with the cat.
Yeah, you're lucky you're on a slight slope.
Yeah. Lots of mud. All right, then. I'll see you soon.
Right. I think what was the other thing I was going to say?
What?
I can't remember it now. It was about your acting. You just need to improve. Work at it. Keep working.
You just made that up. Anyway, I'll speak to you soon. An actor's job is never finished. Fucking hell. Right, who's there now? No one there? Right, okay. Oh, Bill's gone. Night, Bill. Oh my God, it has. Right, okay. So, guys, anyway, I don't know. We didn't have any. I don't know what happened tonight online and stuff. So very different last night. Night, folks. Diolch yn fawr i chi. No stop. I got to do something for wildfire tonight now. Thank you very much, and thanks for watching, and thanks for your support. And I can look in the chat box. Nothing in that chat box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nothing in that chat box. 6, 7, 8. Nothing in that box. Chat box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, nothing in that chat box. 7. In that one, 8, 9, 10. And Dun, 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 dun. Nos da chi, gwelwch chi eto. Don't forget next week, Tuesday and Wednesday. Night, folks. Thanks for your support. Like and subscribe. Any donations, great.